In its heyday, Goolwa was said to be the New Orleans of the Southern Hemisphere, with paddle steamers loading and unloading their cargo at this wharf. The wharf area is quieter now, but Goolwa itself is a popular destination for a summer holiday break. It's conveniently close enough to Adelaide for a day trip or an easy drive for a longer stay. There are a variety of water sports that you can do on the lake, as well as sandy ocean beaches. There's a nice bit of history to enjoy as well. Currently, there is one restored paddle steamer called the Oscar W that calls Goolwa home. Paddle steamers helped open up inland Australia as the rivers were used as transport routes. The steamers would come down the River Murray to try and get to the sea. Unfortunately, the Murray mouth is surrounded by sandbanks, and so the exit to the sea is quite treacherous, and after ships were smashed onto the sandbanks, a river port was established at Goolwa. Cargo would get unloaded on the wharf and then loaded onto a train to make the trip to Port Elliot and then be loaded onto seagoing ships. I originally thought that the train was a steam train, but the trains were actually horse-drawn ones. 2 horses would pull the train. Each team of horses worked a certain distance and then would change for a fresh team. There's a restored old train which looks like a carriage next to the Goolwa tourist office. The stables near the wharf still exist and now belong to the RSL, the Return Services League, an association for military veterans. It's still possible to catch a train from Goolwa with a stop at Port Elliot and then on to Victor Harbour. It's an old historic train run by volunteers and it runs on weekends and school holidays. During the summer months, the train engine is an old diesel one because of the fire danger, and during the winter months, a lovely old steam engine pulls the carriages. I happened to be at a railway crossing and heard the train whistle and that it was coming, so I managed to get some footage of it on its way to Goolwa. It's very much a vintage train, with wooden walls, heavy glass windows. You open them and that's the air conditioning, and leather seats. After it leaves Port Elliot, the track runs along the coastline to Victor Harbour. I've left the original sound on as I like the clickety-clack sound of the old train. That's Granite Island on the left. A standard holiday joke when returning back to work is to declare, "I went overseas on my holidays," the punchline being Granite Island. Technically, over the sea. There's a causeway that you walk across, so you don't even need to go on a boat to get there. I had lunch in Victor Harbour and then caught the train back, this time getting footage of it leaving the station at Port Elliot and then it starts to turn inland. As it's midsummer, the surrounding countryside has dried off and all the crops have been harvested. Goolwa is on Lake Alexandrina, but it also has a coastal beach. It was quite windy the day I took this footage, so not a lot of people on the beach, but you can see the flags that the surf lifesavers have put out, and every Australian child learns that the first principle of ocean swimming is always swim between the flags at a patrolled beach. I went up to the lookout at the top of the sand dunes and you can get a great view of the lake and then across to the ocean. It's trivia alert time. Lake Alexandrina was named after Queen Victoria. Her first name was actually Alexandrina, and she was called Drina in her childhood. She took one of her grander names when she became Queen. Lots of things in Australia are named after Queen Victoria, including a whole state. The River Murray, which is freshwater, flows into Lake Alexandrina and then out into the ocean. By the early 20th century, locks upriver had regulated the flow of the river, and during times of drought when river levels were low, salty seawater would get into the lake. This caused a great deal of environmental damage, so in 1935 the South Australian government built barrages across the lake. When the river flow was low, the barrages would close all their gates and that kept the salt water out. During good water flow times, the barrage gates would be open to allow the fresh water to flow through the River Murray. This barrage is a lock that allows boats to access the lower level water in the river. This is quite exciting. I've been on the barrages many times, but this was the first time though that I'd been through a lock. Apparently it's the smallest one in the lock system, but it does have a lock keeper who operates the lock gates. Some of the upriver locks are do-it-yourself models. The Murray mouth is now kept open by dredging. This year Australia's had good rainfall and no area is technically in drought. The river flow is also good, with plenty of fresh water coming down and out through the mouth, so the sand is naturally being pushed out. The dredges aren't needed to suck out the sand. The Murray mouth and the Southern Ocean out there, and pelicans all in a row swimming onto a sandbank. Once past the Murray mouth, we went into the Coorong National Park for a short distance, and it was fascinating to see how much sand there was there, and to learn that 30 years ago the mouth of the Murray was in a different spot as the shifting sand had kept sealing it up. Back at the Goolwa wharf area, we could see the train at the station, as well as the wharf area where there had been shipyards building the paddle steamers that went along the river. The Oscar W wasn't there, as I saw that it was off doing a trip across the other side of the lake. Goolwa was the first town in Australia to become part of the cittaslow movement. It originated in Italy, hence the name città, as well as the English slow. It's the same philosophy as the slow food movement, but instead it's all about lifestyle. Goolwa has a slow, easy pace of life, and holidaying in the town, you become immersed in that slow pace. A perfect place in our big wide world to get to know.